And welcome. We are delighted that you are joining us for this webinar that we've designed to help you get ready to teach our updated Cambridge IGCSE mathematics and additional mathematics syllabuses for assessment from 2025. I am joined by several mathematics experts. I'm not going to introduce them now. Everyone's going to introduce themselves as we work through this webinar. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Ali Melville-Klein, who has spearheaded all of these really exciting improvements that we're introducing to our mathematics portfolio. Over to you, Ali.
Thanks, Charlotte. Okay, welcome. Hi, everybody. It's lovely to have you with us today. And let's look at what's going to be coming up in today's session. So, the first thing to bear in mind is that all of these changes will come into place for assessment from 2025. So let's hold that year in our minds. 2025 is when these changes are going to take place. So today, Martin's going to talk to us about the changes to Cambridge IGCSE Mathematics 0580 or 0980. And then Jeff's going to tell us about the changes to Cambridge IGCSE Additional Mathematics 0606. And then I'm going to talk to you about support and endorsed resources available for these new syllabuses. And then Charlotte's going to tell us about where and when we can find out more information. But before we start, I'm going to take you through why we make changes to our syllabuses on a regular basis at Cambridge. So, why do we make any changes? Every qualification needs to be reviewed regularly, and that's because ideas will change about education and assessment, new technology will come in, we'll refine how we do things, and our schools will change how they do things as well. So under our Cambridge Code of Practice, we normally review and update our qualifications about once every 6 years or so. And we do that in order to make sure that they're up to date and that they're fit for purpose, that they work really, really well. And whenever we review our qualifications, we draw upon lots of sources of information and feedback. One of the key ones is research, teaching research and assessment research and research in the subject area. So, for example, with mathematics, we've been working with our colleagues over in the Cambridge Mathematics team. Now, they have been building over the past number of years a framework of all of the concepts in mathematical teaching and learning and using educational research to fit them together to form a progression framework of all of the concepts that you need as a student to progress in mathematics, all the way from your first early ideas of what number and space are all the way up to pre-university level. So if you haven't seen it, it's well worth going and having a look. Now, we worked with our colleagues over in Cambridge Mathematics to check that our upper secondary mathematics suite, so all of our mathematics IGCSEs and all of our mathematics O-levels were well balanced, included all the ideas that you needed to take you from the start of your IGCSE or O-level study in mathematics all the way up to the top end of your course. To support progression and to make sure that all of those ideas held together really well to form a coherent, balanced and achievable programme of learning for our upper secondary learners. Through the development process, we also talk to an awful lot of people, an awful lot of stakeholders, and we use their feedback to make sure that everything works really well and meets the needs of our customers and our teachers. So those stakeholders include ministries of education, where we work with ministry partners, all of our teachers and schools who offer Cambridge Mathematics qualifications. We also talk to all of our examiner team and our subject experts. We capture feedback from trainers like Jeff and Martin and colleagues across the business and any partners that we work with externally in order to make sure that operationally our exams work really well and that they're manageable and reliable and valid. These review opportunities are a way of making sure that all of the good things on our qualifications are improved upon and kept. And where there is an opportunity to make things work even better, we take that opportunity. So let's look at what's happened so far. The timeline so far, it takes about 2 years or so to redevelop a qualification. So we started working on upper secondary mathematics about 2 years ago. And we started off by doing a big online consultation with all of our schools who taught mathematics qualifications to find out what they liked, what they didn't like, what their students did really well with, what they struggled with, what was easy to teach and what was hard to teach. And we also asked lots of questions about what people needed in terms of support and training, the amount of teaching time they had to deliver the course, and any other queries that they had that they wanted to feed back about these qualifications. And so we used that feedback and input from Cambridge Mathematics and from our examiners and subject experts, and feedback from how well our qualifications run operationally, to put together some proposals of what we wanted to change. We then took those proposals to a series of focus groups with all of our teachers across the world. So we ran around 25 focus groups with different countries and different syllabuses. That was an opportunity to talk through the proposals for changes in depth, including changes to subject content and changes to assessment, and find out a little bit more about how our teachers deliver these qualifications and how our students learn. And they were really rich experiences, and we really, really enjoyed them. We got an awful lot out of them. That helped us to refine our proposals and understand better what our teachers and students needed. So at the start of this year, 2022, we then followed up with another online consultation with schools as we started to work on materials to check that the fine detail within the assessments and within the content was right and clear, and just to give them a final refinement. This year in September 22, we published the syllabuses and the specimen assessment materials for all of our upper secondary mathematics qualifications. So those can be found on the subject pages of the Cambridge website or on our school support hub. So if you haven't already seen them, please do go and make sure that you have bookmarked the syllabus pages and you've downloaded the specimen assessment materials. And you'll see firsthand what the changes are. So the first assessment of these qualifications is going to be 2025. So that's March for our colleagues in India, that's June, and that's November 2025. So whether you're starting your teaching now or whether you're planning for your first teaching of these revised qualifications, let's now move on to what those changes actually are. So Martin, I'm going to hand over to you now to tell us about what the changes are for IGCSE Mathematics 0580 and 0980.
Thank you very much, Ali, and welcome. Yes, in this section, we're going to be looking at all of the major changes in the 0580 and the 0980 specification for 2025. So let's start with the key headlines, the main things that are going to be changing. And I will work through these one by one in a moment. So firstly, there's going to be an equal balance between each of the papers on each of the tiers. There's going to be a new non-calculator paper at both tiers. There's no change in the demand of the papers. Each paper is going to be clear. It's going to have a very simple format in terms of both their language and their layout. There's going to be changes and updates to the content in the notes and examples on the specification to help you deliver the curriculum. There's going to be a new formula sheet, and also the words for the aims, the assessment objectives, and the learner attributes will also be updated. So let's look at these in turn and see how these changes impact. So currently we have one short and we have one long paper. And what this can mean is that students can become very tired at the end of the long paper and have to move between multiple areas of the syllabus for the short paper in a very short amount of time. Now we will have a mixture of items across the papers so that students can benefit from both the short answer questions and structured items, and this will improve their experience. By balancing the papers, we are making sure that both assessment experiences give students an opportunity to show their knowledge across the whole syllabus. In consultation, our teachers supported the changes as being fair for their students, improving the overall assessment experience for the students. Now, we already ask candidates not to use a calculator in the current assessment, but there's no guarantee that candidates will show their working in doing this. Grouping all of the items that do not need a calculator onto one of the papers is fairer to the candidates, as we can be sure that they have completed tasks without relying on the calculator. In this way, candidates have much more potential to gain marks in the assessment for the work that they do, and this will improve their confidence in working mathematically. This will also support them in many other subject areas or in real-life contexts that require them to understand the meaning of values, the meaning of processes, and the use of data. We showed teachers in the focus groups and consultation activities how the non-calculator paper is very, very familiar in approach. Lots of questions that are currently set could appear on either paper. The focus of the non-calculator paper will not be arithmetic. So that means values that will be used in questions will be appropriate to the focus of the question. They won't be difficult numbers just to be difficult. The purpose of the non-calculator paper is not to increase that arithmetic or recall load on the candidates, but it's there to support them to demonstrate their mathematical fluency confidently and assess areas of the content better, things like fractions and surds, for example. We always make sure we use clear and simple language, minimum use of context, and consistent command words to help students across all of our examinations. So the content changes are minimal, and we will unpack those shortly. And we have also included more extensive notes and examples to support teachers in their understanding of the requirements of the syllabus. We have looked across all of the content at upper secondary to make sure we use the clearest way to express what is required. Using the same wording across syllabuses and making differences between the tiers and between qualifications, for example, IGCSE and O-level, IGCSE Mathematics and International Mathematics. This is going to help teachers who deliver more than one syllabus. We have reviewed the progression, the learning outcome by learner outcome, from primary through lower secondary into IGCSE and O-level, and onto the additional maths and the AS and A-level math suites. This means we have made sure that all the content builds together to a coherent maths programme, and there is nothing that is not essential to the course. We've also worked with Cambridge Maths, who have researched a complete framework of mathematical concepts to check all key mathematical concepts are included in the programme, and the ordering, progression, and balance overall is optimum in terms of good pedagogical practice. The formula sheet will always be the same at each tier. All formulae are provided unless otherwise stated in notes and examples column of the syllabus. The formula sheet encourages the skill of selecting the correct formula, which is an important mathematical skill. We would expect candidates to be familiar with the formulae, but having a formula sheet at the start of each paper will give them reassurance that the one they have selected is correct. This reduces the recall load on the candidate. We believe that it's more important for students to be able to understand and use mathematics. Most of the formula on the formula sheets are given in items currently. We've looked at how the aims, assessment objectives, and learner attributes work across the suite to express clearly the unique nature of each syllabus and how they are aspirational and stretching for our students. The assessment objectives describe all the different mathematical thinking and communication skills assessed in the paper. So, what is staying the same in the syllabus? So overall, students are still going to have the same amount of assessment, and it will remain at the same level of demand. So we can see at the core assessment level, paper 1 and paper 3, they are still in total the three hours, 1 hour, 30 minutes each. We have worked to make sure, however, that the papers are very, very balanced in order to increase accessibility and to help students perform well all the way through the exam time. So again, at extended, we can see that each paper is 2 hours. So in total, the amount of time is the same. If we look at the core and the extended, we can see that the number of marks overall are also the same. So what has been added to the Cambridge IGCSE content? Now, there's not been anything added to the core, but it has been expanded in places in the notes and examples column. So, for instance, there is much more explanation in the notes regarding the recall of squares and cubes, so that teachers have a much better idea about what the demands of the syllabus are. Based on teacher feedback and progression research for extended tier, we've included SERDs to support the understanding of irrational numbers and work in algebra and geometry. This is going to help students to progress onto additional and AS level mathematics by expanding their experience. We have also introduced knowing how to work with exact trig values in geometry, so you can show students how to work from unit triangles to trig ratios, and this is really going to help to reinforce those relationships. Domain and range is now included in functions content, and this is to help students to be aware of how functions relate to graph content, and this will allow them to move confidently between these different representations. We've also added to the types of graphs of functions that are needed. So, for example, of the form ax to the power of n, the values of n are extended to now include -1/2 and 1/2. So if things are being added to the syllabus to make sure that the demand level remains the same, there have been a few things that have also been removed from the content. So we've looked at vectors in core and we removed them. Now, although this is a great topic, we believe that it will give more space for reinforcing key ideas at core level, and it's not really essential to learning at that level. In extended, we have reduced some of the notation required in terms of set notation and inequalities, and removed the formal criteria of congruence. We've also removed box and whisker diagrams. Again, this has all been implemented following feedback from centres and reviewing progression and balanced research. We want to make sure that overall the course can still be taught in 130 guided learning hours. And this means where a topic has been added, we have had to remove something elsewhere. These are all of the elements that have been identified that could be removed without detracting from progression of the syllabuses and coherence of the course. So, how does this affect teaching? Well, there will be no change to overall teaching time. The syllabus is still required to be taught suggested to be taught in 130 guided learning hours. Teachers should review the additional guidance and notes information that is in the syllabus content. Also, check the changes for the relevant tiers in your schemes of work. Because of the non-calculator element now, you will need to help learners to prepare for solving problems without a calculator. You will need to help to encourage students to show their work clearly. You'll need to support your learners also in selecting the correct formula from the formula sheet. Also, you would need to support students to know how to use their calculator effectively and efficiently on the calculator paper. So that is the overview of the 0580-0980 syllabus changes. Now I'm going to hand you over to Jeff, who is going to talk about the updates to the IGCSE Additional Maths 0606.
Thank you, Martin, for that introduction to 0580 and 0980 IGCSE mathematics changes. I'm Jeff Fair, I'm one of the trainers for Cambridge, and I'm going to be focusing on the 0606 IGCSE Additional Mathematics and what's happening with us. Our key headlines. There are no changes to the duration of our papers. the number of marks on our papers, or the weightings of our paper. However, we will be having a new non-calculator paper. Our paper 1 will become non-calculator and the paper 2 will become calculator focused. We'll look at that in more detail in a little bit. Our content has been updated following the changes that Martin has talked about on upper secondary, and there has been some greater clarification in the syllabus in terms of what's actually expected. And our syllabus presentation looks very different to what we are used to. We are maintaining a strong rigour and progression to AS and A-level study, as it was anticipated, and we currently do. Our formula sheet has been updated to reflect the changes that we're doing, and we've updated the wordings of our aims, our assessment objectives, and our learner attributes, really just to explain them further than they actually are currently, and actually just trying to reinforce the process and the rigour that we expect within the additional maths content. So what is changing? As I said, paper 1 will become a non-calculator paper and paper 2 will continue to assess calculator skills. Currently, like in IGCSE, there are questions where we ask candidates not to use a calculator, but there are also many skills within the syllabus itself where calculators are not essential and are not actually a requirement to use the techniques required. And they will all be focused within the paper 1 content, which gives it actually a better process for actually people to be able to understand what's going on. We've updated the content because of indices and surds becoming assumed knowledge. That's obviously been removed from our syllabus. We will therefore be introducing, having had consultation with our stakeholders and progression, the geometry of a circle, which connects very well with the rest of our content. It links in with quadratic functions and cubic functions. It also involves us with looking at simultaneous equations and leads well into the circle work that required at A-level mathematics. We've also changed the name of differentiation and integration to the more common name of calculus. There's no change of content in it, just changing the title. And there is no other major changes to the content. There's been clarifications of 1 or 2 items. There's much more detail in the explanations given in the guidance columns, and that makes it much clearer for everybody to see what's actually going on. And because of the processes versus there, we'll be looking at the aims and objectives. We'll go back to those and look at those in slightly more detail because we really want to reinforce the processes that are going on in terms of maintaining our rigour. There's a current overview. You can see that actually the topics have changed, stayed the same. The only one that's been added in is the coordinate geometry for the circle and the renaming of the differentiation and integration as calculus. There is nothing else that's actually going on there. And we'll look at in a moment at what is actually going to be within the syllabus. And there is what's going to be required for the coordinate geometry of a circle. You can see that we're being very specific about what we're anticipating students should be covering here. And this is also an example of the layout of the syllabus that we're going to be using. When we're moving here, you can actually see that the equation is going to be required in either of the formats that we're referring to there. We're using it to identify the circle, the centre and the radius of the circle. We'll be looking at doing problems that use the intersection of a circle with a straight line and determining whether the straight line is a tangent, a chord, or doesn't even intersect the circle. We'll be finding the equations of the tangents, but we're not expecting calculus to be used to actually do this. It's actually going to be more the geometry in there because this is coordinate geometry. And then we'll be looking at solving problems involving the intersection of 2 circles. And you can see there we've specified that we're really expecting people to be able to work out either the equation of a common chord or determining if the 2 circles do intersect, just touch, or don't intersect at all. And that really is all the new content there. However, with the removal of the indices and surds from within the topic, there is still going to be the expectation that students will have knowledge and understanding of how to use this because that's why they're moving into IGCSE 0580, 0980, and they will be part of questions, but they won't be assessed as such. So we will no longer have questions that are focused on assessing surds and indices, but we'll be using them as a skill that's actually required within our topics itself. What's staying the same? Well, as I said, the duration of our papers are staying the same. they're still both going to be 2 hours long. The number of marks is still going to be the same, 80 marks each. They're still going to be 50% of the total assessment. So the weighting's the same, number of marks the same. We're still going to include a formula list. So that's not changing either. And the style and format of our questions is staying the same. They're still going to be the structured and unstructured questions that we're used to. And we're still having candidates answering all questions, again, as we are used to. The only thing that really is not staying the same in terms of our papers is going to be the fact that the questions are separating out. And you can probably tell already when you think of the questions on our current papers, ones that will be suitable for paper 1 for the non-calculator and paper 2 for the calculator. As in the 0980, 0580 IGCSE, the non-calculator paper is not going to be a test of arithmetical skills. It really is going to be a case of using appropriate numbers to show the practices that are actually going to be required. It is not to do with testing the ability to do arithmetic accurately. Well, or complicated arithmetic accurately, shall we say, more pertinent. So what do we need to actually do before we have a very quick look at a question to see what we're going to look at for the new topics as well? There's no change to the teaching time. Overall, our syllabus content is identical to what it is currently, so there's no change in the teaching time. We believe this is going to reinforce the good use of notation with the laying out of working. We're expecting that, as it already is current within the additional mathematics content, the idea of presenting your work and communicating the processes involved in achieving your answers. We will need to actually practice solving questions more without a calculator. Quite often, students like to use the calculator as a prop in a problem rather than as actually a necessity. So they're using a calculator to solve problems where actually they do not need to have a calculator, but we will need to encourage them in topics where we have routinely used the calculator because actually they can do that, they are able to answer the same sort of questions without using a calculator because of the mathematics involved. We'll need to update our teaching plans to include the geometry of a circle. Obviously, with a new topic coming in, we'll need to make sure that is within our teaching plans. Because SIRs and indices are becoming assumed knowledge, we need to make sure they're removed. But as I said, there need to be skills that we actually have, and that does raise a problem for some schools where the teaching will need to be considered in terms of progression between IGCSE and IGCSE mathematics and additional mathematics, simply because if you're in some cases you may be not teaching it IGCSE mathematics and then it becomes assumed knowledge, because 2024 is going to be a key year for that, because in 2025 it will become assumed knowledge for additional mathematics. And we will need to really encourage you to review the notes and examples columns for more information about the content, to be really clear about what's being expected. And just so as I said, I'm just going to show you the 2 questions that are actually on the current papers for the circle problems. This is on the calculator. This is on the non-calculator paper, and it's on the specimen paper that's actually available to us on the School Support Hub. A circle has a centre with a radius that's given. We're told that a line intersects as a perpendicular bisector, intersecting the circles at point X and Y, and we have to find the area of the kite. It's an unstructured question, so it's like the ones we're used to at the moment, which are unstructured, where we're not being prompted in how to solve the problem. And again, it's one of those areas where the content style is going to be the same, the style of question is the same as we're used to, but actually that is what it's going to be on the circle problem. And if I move up a page, you can see the sort of questions that we have here. Find a displacement of P from O when T is 5. So if I move to the top of this question to get the actual question itself. In the question, the units in meters and seconds, and it's a particle travelling, and we're looking at some kinematics, and so it's going to be looking at calculus usage in here. And again, you can see with the sort of numbers we're talking about, where T is 2, we are looking at having values that can be used in calculated mentally or easily on paper. And a similar question, this is a more structured question for the circle from the paper 2, where the numbers you can see instantly are more complicated, and we have a circle equation given us there, and this is a more structured question where we've got different parts. That's what the question here, going through this. Find the coordinates of the centre and the length of the radius. Show that the point 10, 6.5 lies within the circle. And then show the two circles touch. You're not required to find the coordinates. So you have to show how the circles touch and communicating how you're doing it. But you can see the values involved in here are more relevant for actually using with a calculator. The whole time in the papers, the numbers being used are appropriate for using calculators on non-calculator calculations. And that really is our review of here. So I'm moving over here now to hand on to the next person.
Thanks, Jeff. So now let's have a little look at what support materials are going to be available and when. So first things first, if you don't have access to our school support hub, it's really worth investigating. This is the main area where we make sure that all of our past paper materials and all of our support materials are available to our teachers. So the link's there on the presentation, and there's also access to a subject forum. And if you don't have access, please go and speak to your examinations officer in your centre, and they should be able to set you up with an access. So all of these support materials are going to be available first and foremost on the School Support Hub, on the individual syllabus subject pages. The syllabus itself and the specimen papers are also available on our main Cambridge subject pages on our main Cambridge website. But let's look at what support materials are available for 0580 and 0606 and when. So the schemes of work for Mathematics 0580 are already available on our School Support Hub, and they were published in the late summer, so in July 2022. So please go onto the School Support Hub and download your schemes of work for 0580. We're also going to have specimen paper answers, and they're going to start to be ready from about March 2023 onwards. Now, specimen paper answers are where we've selected particularly important questions or good illustrative questions from our specimen papers, and they're going to include a model answer and some commentary from our examiners to help teachers understand what the changes are and prepare their learners. We're going to have a scheme of work for additional mathematics, and that's actually going to be available probably around about March time next year. So please start looking on the School Support Hub then. And later on in 2023, we're going to have some more classroom teaching materials, including the teacher guide, and that's going to be available from about July onwards. In the coming year, we're also looking at producing a second set of specimen papers for all of our upper secondary mathematics qualifications, and those will be available on the School Support Hub towards about the end of the school year. So around about September next year would be the time to start looking for those. And we're also going to be doing some practice materials, so some additional questions to use as practice. And those also will be on the School Support Hub around about September next year. We're working on some mapping documents as well, to help you know what the detailed changes are between the old syllabus content and the new syllabus content and how these syllabuses compare to each other. So if you co-teach additional mathematics and IGCSE mathematics, we're going to be working on a mapping document for that as well. So if you start looking on the School Support Hub in 2023, that's where those mapping documents will be published. After the first examination, we'll have some example candidate responses. So that's real life candidate working for real life live papers, and they'll be published in early 2026 after the first year of assessment. So now let's move on and look at Resource Plus. So Resource Plus is a lovely resource that we have on the School Support Hub. It used to be only available for subscription, but now it's freely available to all of our centres. And it includes topic-specific materials, some videos, some ready-made lesson plans, and lots of hints and tips around good ways of teaching this material. It's already available on our School Support Hub. And if you also teach either O-level mathematics or international mathematics, some of the topic areas you'll be able to use for those lessons as well. And I know that there's going to be some more materials added to our Resource Plus packs for mathematics in the coming year. So if you haven't had a look at Resource Plus for mathematics, please do go onto the School Support Hub and have a look. And now let's talk about textbooks and endorsed resources. So we're really lucky for mathematics. We have 4 publishing partners for both IGCSE mathematics and additional mathematics who publish for these qualifications. So it's great to have access to lots of different materials so that you can choose the materials that work best for you and best for your students. So all of these endorsed resources will be published from about March onwards in 2023. So if you go onto the main Cambridge subject pages on the website or on the School Support Hub, you should be able to click through to the individual publishers' pages to find out more about each of these endorsed materials. And the last thing to look at is going to be professional development. So our professional development and training. So for all of our syllabuses, we work with our regional teams to set up online training sessions and face-to-face training sessions to support teachers on the updated syllabuses. And that training might be introductory for new teachers who are either new to Cambridge or new to teaching the syllabus, or extension training for those experienced teachers who just want to know a little bit more about the assessment. There's going to be a lot of activity for mathematics in the coming years. So if you're interested, please have a look at our professional development calendar, which is the link there takes you from the main Cambridge website. And you'll be able to filter it and find a maths event that's going to suit you in your region or online for the syllabus that you want to teach. And that's where you can book professional development for mathematics. So now I'm going to hand back to Charlotte, who's going to tell us a little bit more about where to find information.
Thanks, Ali. So as Ali explained at the start of this session, we review all our syllabuses on a regular basis to make sure that they meet the needs of our schools and learners. And so I'd just like to quickly let you know about 3 really easy ways that you can stay up to date. We promote all of the changes through our What's New update that you might already have heard of. This is our twice yearly campaign that runs every February and September, and it really is the best way to find details of all our new and updated qualifications and support services to help you deliver a Cambridge programme and make sure that you're up to date. So to find out what's new from Cambridge International, you simply need to visit cambridgeinternational.org/new. As part of that update, we also produce a syllabus changes guide that lists out all of the new, updated and withdrawn syllabuses. And this is all this is published at least a year before first teaching and well in advance of the final assessment if it's a withdrawal. So our September 2022 syllabus changes guide includes information about all of the Cambridge IGCSE mathematics syllabuses that you've heard about during this session today. And then finally, a really great way to stay up to date is to sign up to receive our email notifications about changes to syllabuses. And you can do that on by simply visiting the page, or sorry, the URL at the bottom of this screen, cambridgeinternational.org/syllabus updates, and then you'll be able to subscribe to the mailing lists that interest you depending on the subject. So obviously the math subject update is going to interest you, but we do encourage you to share this information and to share these pages with colleagues who are no doubt interested in other subjects. So that brings us to the end of this session. Thank you so much for joining us. If you do have any questions, please visit the relevant syllabus pages in the first instance, as well as the help area on our public website. We are working on pulling together a long list of FAQs to help you make sense of some of these changes and to answer common questions that we receive. You can also get in touch with our customer services team if you do have any questions, and you can see the email address and the telephone number on this slide. So thank you so much for joining us. and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.